Larry, can you talk briefly about Thomas Sowell and how you came to meet him? And
Thomas Sowell is in his 80s now, and he is an economist and probably the smartest person I've ever been around. Happen to be black. I first saw Thomas Sowell when I would watch Firing Line, the show that we Buckley had on PBS for 20 some odd years. And Thomas Sowell came on the show and started talking about how he thought racism was not a major problem in America anymore, which stunned me because I'm 14. And he was opposed to affirmative action, which doubly stunned me. I kind of felt that given the fact that we got jacked over because of slavery and because of Jim Crow, they kind of owed us this. And he talked about how if you don't raise your game, you'll always be a second-class citizen. It's not fair to make other people who are white stand at the back of the bus because of something that their forefathers did. He talked about the small number of white people that have any real connection with slavery. Right now, only about 5 white Americans have any real generational connection to slavery, meaning that their ancestors both owned slaves. Even during slavery in the South, only 1 out of 10 people owned slaves. And most of those only owned 1 or 2 because they were expensive. Most white people have come to the country after that. So when you look at all the white people in America, only about 5% have any real connection to slavery. And he said stuff like that. So why should everybody else pay for something that their ancestors had nothing to do with? And I was flabbergasted by that. So I began reading his books. He's written about 40 books. David Mamet, the playwright, called Thomas Sowell America's greatest contemporary philosopher. Not economist, philosopher. Because he writes a column in about 300 newspapers, been writing it now for 20 or 30 years, written about 30 or 40 books. If you guys don't know him, go on YouTube and you'll see him and check him out and meet him. So I'm fast forward now, I'm doing talk radio, and I'm on C-SPAN. My show in those days was 4 hours. They put the entire 4-hour show live on C-SPAN, so anybody in the country could see it. I get a letter from a man named Thomas Sowell. Dear Larry, my wife and I watched you. You were amazing. I just want you to know how thoroughly impressed we were with you. If I can do anything for you, let me know. That's like getting a letter from Elvis. You know, he's still alive. And Tom Sowell invited me to his home. He lives in the Bay Area. He's so secretive. I mean, you should see the mail I get, death threats I get. Imagine the death threats he got 30 years ago, saying this kind of stuff. So in his office at Stanford, he doesn't have his name on the door. He's had so many death threats. He won't even give you his address. When he asked me to come and visit him, he picked me up from the airport. He wasn't going to give me his address. So we went to his house, spent the weekend together. And I just asked him questions, and it was just probably one of the best weekends I've ever had. He's also a photographer, and you should go online and see some of his work. And he said if he could do it all over again, he would have been a photographer full time. And I said, I said, Tom, honestly, your pictures are wonderful, but there are a lot of good photographers. There's only one contemporary, greatest American contemporary philosopher, and that's you. Anyway, he's an amazing guy. He does a lot of work about the damage done by many of these programs that the left thinks that they're helping. Minimum wage, for example. Most people think minimum wage is just something that needs to be done because if you don't have a minimum wage, bosses are so cheap and so ornery they won't pay you jack. Turns out that before the minimum wage, a black teenager was more likely to have a job than a white teenager. Why? Because a black teenager would market lower wages. I'll work for less money than this white kid would. His cost of living was lower, so black kids were able to market their skills lower than a white kid. All of a sudden, the law comes in, designed, by the way, by white racists, because they were tired of these unskilled black teenagers taking jobs away from other white teenagers. So all of a sudden, they put in a minimum wage telling people, you got to pay here. Well, this guy willing to work here. Sorry, you got to pay here. Well, if you're going to pay here, you can get some white people to do that. And so for the first time, white teenagers began to have more jobs as a percentage than black teenagers. It had the opposite effect that most black people today, left-wing people today, think it has. So you have Hillary and Obama all raising the minimum wage, having no blooming idea how much damage this is doing to the very people they claim that they care about. He also talks a lot about family and about the relationship between the welfare state and single-parent households and how much damage it's doing. He's where I've gotten a lot of my data, my information, and he's just an incredible guy. So Thomas Sowell, S-O-W-E-L-L is his name.